Ben Adlin wrote this story, or it came out yesterday. And the headline is White House press secretary falsely says Biden expunged marijuana convictions, a claim that's been repeatedly debunked. Now, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, was on a show with Wendy Osifo, Dr. Osifo. I'm screwing this up, but I don't really care. And she was asked a question about whether, Biden's going to expunge, and she, rather ignorantly said, oh, he's already done that. Well, no, he hasn't. He took a little baby step towards pardoning people with federal possession convictions only, and a pardon does not automatically expunge. So it just exposed that she doesn't know what she's talking about, and she should shut up about things like this. But that's not going to stop people in political times from shooting their mouth off about stuff they don't really understand. Now, she's also still pounding the Schedule 3 thing, and in my opinion, rescheduling to Schedule 3 is a horrible thing to do. We've talked about this repeatedly, that social equity will die, and none of us are going to get licenses to do this. You'll never be able to smoke stuff because there's not a smokable controlled substance out there. And the reality is that none of what Biden did released anybody from prison. Mm-hmm. So they're continuing to blow this horn. It's just not, making music in many people's ears. Now, as Omar just mentioned, Harris has taken the step to state she's going to federally legalize, she's going to work with Congress. I'd like to see a whole lot more detail about this, because you have to work with Congress to change the scheduling, take it out of the Controlled Substances Act, which I'm assuming she's talking about. She's talking about recreational, which means this has got to leave the Controlled Substances Act, and it takes Congress to do that. The president could, sign all kinds of executive actions. The courts, I think, would step in and stop it. You have to have Congress step in. And Harris is trying to tie all this to we're going to advance the plight of the black men in this country who've been disproportionately maltreated for cannabis. We're going to put them in a position to access wealth and jobs. And, I'd like to hope that would be true, but based upon past history, I'm not holding my breath. Now, Tim Walz loped along and said, we should leave it up to states. Well, if that's all you got to say, Tim, you should probably think about just shutting the fuck up. Right now, the states are trying to do this, but the federal law still holds the sword of Damocles over your head. And if you get outside of these state laws, you can still the feds come in. They haven't been doing it, but until they take that threat away, you still cannot sleep well at night if you're trying to rock in a state system here and advance your business. Now, Trump, I guess to his credit, has been talking about the medical benefits of cannabis. And quite frankly, I don't think Trump knows his ass from a hole in the ground about the medical benefits of anything. It's good to hear him say it. And he's talking about, the medical benefits. Now, we should leave it to the states. And based upon his track record, Jeff Sessions pulled the Cole memo. I don't think Trump particularly liked it because it was not a good political move for him. And to their credit, they didn't go after state actors. I guess if you could give him some credit for anything here. But he did threaten in his signing statements for the continuing resolutions that he would ignore the spending rider. Okay. So looking back on what we've got here, I think J.D. Vance is shutting his mouth because no one believes anything he says about cannabis. He's so full of shit about this that he's just shutting up. Probably a good thing. Trump, I don't know that he really has a record he can stand on about cannabis. Walz, I don't think he knows what he's talking about either. Kamala, if she wants to get somewhere, has got to come out with a lot more details about what this would look like, because legalization is one of those terms that when you drill down on it, you have to figure out what does it actually mean. Schedule 3 is not going to legalize cannabis. Mm-hmm. It's just not. You got to get it clear out of the Controlled Substances Act and have the Congress scrub every mention of marijuana or cannabis or its isomers and salts and all that stuff out of all the federal laws, so you don't, legalize it. But if you grow 100 plants, you go to prison for 5 years. I mean, you've got to really scrub all this stuff. So I'd like to see a lot more details. And I want to remind everybody that I won my first election for president of class by promising to put Coca-Cola in the drinking fountain. And what I'm sensing here is a whole lot of promises to put Coca-Cola in the drinking fountain. And I'd say, without insulting anybody, they're all full of shit. I want to see a whole lot more detail here before I back anybody for cannabis anymore, because Obama promised us the moon and we got the whole memo.
Yep.
We've had a lot of promises from candidates over the decades now, and it just hasn't really panned out that well. I had to eat food with a spork for 5 years because of this nonsense. I'd like to see all of that stop. I'm going to throw it back at you. What do you guys think?
I totally agree with you, Dale. Make Coke great again.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is right, Dale. Saying that she's in support of legalization it's a general position, but it's not a policy position. And I think we need to see a more concrete policy position of what she means by that. But right now, but it's still the best of either of the candidates in terms of what their position is. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We need to see more detailed policy about what does that mean? What does legalization mean
exactly
to Vice President Harris?
That's what I'm saying.
I think it's more of the same. I think we're seeing, once again, I'm going to do this. Here's my position. Okay, but how? Okay, but when? Okay, but for whom? So, I mean, I'd like to see, something actually concrete, like at least that way. And I think this is intended to be that way, right? Because if you tell us I'm going to do X, Y, Z by day 100, and this is how I'm going to do it, and this is where it's going to start, then now we have a benchmark to hold you to. So we can actually say, hey, no, this is what you said, and there's accountability. There's no accountability if you're just like, yay, weed.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I really see this as a trial balloon from the Harris campaign to see how it would be interpreted. I was interested in the framing because she called it recreational marijuana, not adult cannabis. And us reformers usually stayed away from recreational because it played into the myth of the lazy stoner stereotype.
It also advertising to children, because recreational things are things that you do with your family, parks and things like that.
For fun, and that you do when you're not working. And so I really like adult cannabis better. But the fact that she's, far enough along to be okay with recreational cannabis, to me, signals, number one, not sophisticated about reform thinking and language, but number two, doesn't care what people do for recreation, understands that most Americans think cannabis is healthier than alcohol, tobacco, or other recreational substances. So the fact that there was no pushback, that, we didn't hear the evangelicals in a tizzy when she said she was going to legalize recreational marijuana, I think portends that there's going to be, if she gets elected, they're just not going to enforce the existing cannabis prohibition. But that's very different from actually legalizing cannabis, descheduling, coming up with a rational system to regulate interstate cannabis trade, intertribal cannabis trade, international cannabis trade. All of that will require more than just looking the other way.
Right.
I think it's worth pointing out too that this announcement comes as a part of a very specific and concerted effort, and they've been transparent about it, the Harris campaign, but they are very actively trying to cater to and win the votes of black men. And they've said it openly. That's why the wording of this announcement was how it was, addressing social equity and the historical wrongs that have been done to black Americans specifically, and primarily black men.
Do we think Obama put her up to this?
Man, I just, as a black man,
I think it's a valid question.
As a black man, I just think that this whole like last second Kamala and Obama coming in trying to say do all this shit and say all this shit, it's not going to work. It's actually working the other way around and turning black men like myself, like off to both of them, like straight up. I think this bullshit word salad that she keeps on coming out with, she was doing a whole lot better when it was all about hope and joy. You know, and now getting into specifics, I feel like you got a choice behind, like I said last week, you got a choice to pick the racist ass system that produced Donald Trump or the racist ass product that was produced by this racist ass system that just wants to, at the last minute, every damn election cycle, at the last minute, oh yeah, let's say something that'll help out the black community, right? Like it's tired and it's really off-putting. And this is me saying this. I generally don't. I try to steer away from like the racist, the race game when it comes to these politics, and I try to call them out on both sides. But I think that Kamala specifically is, and the Biden administration by extension, you're losing black men at this point. Like you're losing black men. It just sounds desperate. It sounds like a bunch of bullshit. There are no specifics to anything, and I think the only thing you should be talking about, if you want to catch our ears and move the needle forward, is reparations. That's it. Everything else, and how you would implement those legally, because motherfuckers want those questions, and we know y'all ain't got shit else to talk about the next 3 weeks.
I think she tried to address. I think she tried to address that, Rico, when she said that she was going to give those business loans for $20,000 and make them forgivable.
Yeah, but they're towing this bullshit line.
Do you think $20,000
they're towing this bullshit line. It's saying all you're doing is you are alienating more people, and you're making people more polarized, because the way the country's divided right now, a bunch of motherfuckers on the other side are surely going to say, what about us?
Rico,
we deserve this too.
Rico,
right?
I have a question.
Yeah, the culture wars are just flaring up again at the worst time for them to flare up at the end of this election cycle.
Rico, I have a question for you. Do you think that if it was this $20,000, do you think that is enough to qualify to be considered as reparations?
For the record, I think it's 50,000 is the amount that they're talking about for the small business.
20,000 is the amount that's referenced.
I'm going to answer that question with a couple of other questions. Jason,
are you turning into a politician now, Rico?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that question with a couple of questions. Like what do you define as reparations, number one? Who should qualify for said reparations, number two? And if these are tied together, do you think that $20,000 is worth 400 years of oppression and generational pain?
Well, I don't think $20,000 is enough. That's a pretty easy, no answer for me.
I think it's asinine to even answer that question. Like, for reparations, if you're going to do this shit on a federal level,
so it sounds like
asking me a question about $20,000 as a black man who has to deal with racism, whether it's covert or overt, wherever I go in this country every single day, like $20,000, like, child, please. Like, talk to me when you want to talk some real numbers.
I'll tell you what, you definitely can't buy 40 acres and a mule with $20,000, Rico.
Maybe some of that expanding beachfront property in Florida is now coming up for $20,000.
Stop it.
Oh boy. I mean, it's once again pandering. It's last minute. It's insulting as a black person, because last ditch effort every time. Oh shit, we forgot y'all can vote too. That's
right. Like I said, yesterday, man. Ice Cube was right.
And on that,
I think.
Go ahead, Dale.
When we get to this rescheduling hearing that's going to take place after the election, we're going to get a chance to see just how entrenched the anti-cannabis forces are inside the government, because there's going to be a brawl takes place between the DEA and the Department of Health and Human Services over rescheduling here. And it doesn't matter what you say today. You still have to go face the forces that are lined up against you in the government and in Congress. And so this is just blowing smoke up people's asses, really what it is, to try and get attention at the last second. And again, it's the promise of Coke in the water fountain. It's a lot of nonsense. We'll see how bad this is going to be after this hearing.
Now,
You got
on both
dehydrated
sides too. I think it's misguided, right? Because they're really overestimating the number of people that are single issue cannabis voters. Like that is not a very large demographic. So it's completely misguided at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Right. Fair enough. And what's that, Omar?
I was thinking about how her father, who's Jamaican, would interpret that, because he was very insulted when she was asked about, is she okay with cannabis? And she said, "Oh, I'm Jamaican. It's cool with me." And her father is a very conservative economist. And he was offended that she would cast all Jamaicans as, Rastafarian cannabis users. And so I'm thinking, they're trying to appeal to like, oh, I'm going to throw the weed bone to African Americans. If she wanted to do it, there's a right way to go about it. Get Flavor Flav and Snoop Dogg, make them your cannabis ambassadors, and have them announce it and have them reach out to young black men, and then they would buy it. It wouldn't look like a transparent toy, half-hearted, empty gesture, but it would look a lot more authentic, right? Imagine
Omar.
now if Snoop Dogg was on tour.
I think the difference is we expect that shit. We expect that shit from Trump when it comes off from her. Like you're contradicting everything that you called yourself that you're pretending to be right now.
Omar, is the reason that you chose Flavor Flav because spray packs are so popular right now?
I think Flavor Flav really redeemed himself during the Olympics by sponsoring the water polo team.